In this video, we'll deal with the decision-making unit. A decision-making unit can consist of an individual or a group of individuals who participate in the purchase decision process. Here we're dealing with purchasing and marketing and issues of this nature. So we'll talk about the decision-making unit in the context of making a purchase decision. However, of course, decision-making units apply in many aspects and many parts of business and throughout the business community. So we won't deal with those here. We're dealing with more specifically the decision to make a purchase or not. The decision-making unit exists in organizations and can be applied within households as well. So this idea of the decision-making unit is not confined to the working environment. It's not confined to business or to decisions about marketing or even about the layout of a business. There may be a decision-making unit, a committee who informs the top management about the design of the product or the layout of the plant or the location of the business or whatever. It may be applied on a small scale to within family units, or indeed it could apply just to the individual to look at how decisions are made and what are the processes that are undertaken in making decisions. Individuals are consciously or unconsciously involved in decision-making processes as well. It's not just that the decision-making process is explicit and clearly understood and articulated. It may be that the decision-making process is more routine and perhaps not the subject of a great deal of thought or analysis. Perhaps it's a small-scale purchase or a cheaper purchase or routine purchase, as I said, and in which case the decision-making process is very simple. Clearly, the more expensive products are, or the bigger the decisions that are made are, the more sophisticated the decision-making unit will be. So we need to bear in mind that this idea of a decision-making unit is not confined to business. It could apply within the family, could apply to individuals. It could apply to social clubs. It can apply in many areas of our everyday lives. And the importance of the decision-making unit and the processes it undertakes may be a function of the expense or cost involved in the decision. So it's a wide-ranging topic. Marketers must have an understanding of who is involved in the decision-making unit. This will help them gear marketing campaigns to the right audience. So clearly, the marketing section of a business, the marketing department in a business, must be aware of who the decision-making units are. It could be the decision-making unit is a small committee within another business and they become the customer. So it's important to know who's on the committee and what are their backgrounds and what are they like and what are their experiences. It may be that the decision-making unit is a family unit, that the product suits, let's say, a family with small children or a family without children. People living in different circumstances, living in different areas with different incomes. So there's a whole variety of possibilities that can be incorporated into what is the decision-making unit. But marketers must be aware of this. Marketers are ultimately targeting the decision-making unit. So they're not randomly targeting individuals, they are targeting the decision-making unit. Who are the people who are going to make the decisions to purchase or not to purchase? There's no point in targeting the people who are not going to make the decision. Target the people who are going to make the decision. So there are customer buyers and organizational buyers. Well, buyer behavior is influenced by a range of factors. There are two types of buyers: customers, who buy the product for themselves to consume and to enjoy, or there are businesses who may buy intermediate products like components or raw materials or capital equipment, or they may buy services of accountants or of legal experts. So they may buy services or they may buy goods. They don't buy the goods for their own sake. They buy the goods and services so that they're able to produce a final product which can be sold to the customers. So they're intermediate producers. So we have got this idea of customer buyer behavior, business to customer. So it's business to customer, and this is the process of buying products or services by individuals or households for personal consumption. So the individuals buy the products for personal consumption. They buy the products from businesses. So it's business to customer, B to C. Organizational buyer behavior, B to B, business to business. This refers to buying of goods and services from business to business. Goods are purchased for use to manufacture other products. So generally speaking, companies don't buy raw materials just for the sake of having the raw materials. They buy the raw materials so that they can be processed into products which can be sold. So the products are ultimately sold to the customers. But intermediate businesses, these are ones which make components that perhaps sell to other companies. They make machines that sell to other companies. People don't buy machines for machine's sake. They buy the machine for what the machine can do to facilitate production of products that go to final customers. So we've got two types here. We've got business to consumer, which is us buying products, us as consumers buying products from businesses. And we consume the products. We consume the services. We buy them from the business. B to C, business to consumer. We've also got business to business, one business selling products to another business. Not selling it to the consumer, selling it to other business. So it's a supply chain. And they're in the supply chain. And ultimately, the supply chain will produce a product that we will purchase. Ultimately, the B to B will become B to C. Organizational buying is influenced by employees working for the organization. Several people may be involved in the buying decisions, and this is referred to as the decision-making unit. So the purchase of a large piece of capital equipment may involve many people. It may involve the production staff, the product design staff, the marketing people who know what the market is likely to be in the future and whether it's worthwhile investing in this piece of capital. It'll involve many people throughout the organization, and they may all form into a committee to look into the desirability of making the purchase. And this committee will be the decision-making unit. They will ultimately make the decision as to buy the equipment or not. Customer buyer decisions are based on usually one individual, but a business must take into account cross-functional teams and departments who are responsible for decision making. So in business it's much more complex. They have to take in different functions and different departments, and different individuals will have different contributions to make as to whether to make the purchase or not make the purchase. Whereas consumers go to the shops and make decisions, sometimes make decisions without any previous thought, just impulse buying, just go to the shop and purchase something. So the decision-making unit may be one person making a snap decision. But in business, it may be a committee who has researched the product, researched the market, researched the feasibility of the product, and so on and so on. So the decision-making unit may be much more extensive and elaborate in the context of business. But of course, there again, in the business context, the purchase may be very expensive, whereas for consumer purchases, it may be a small item of expenditure. So less worry if it goes wrong. Each department has specialist knowledge about particular purchases. Therefore, it's important to involve them in the decision-making process. Within a business, different departments will have expertise, different types of expertise. The marketing department will hopefully know the customers and the customer requirements and their needs and wants and so on. The production department will know how to make the product and the issues associated with the production, and the legal department will know about contracts and so on and so on. The finance department will know about cash flow problems and issues associated with making the purchase. So all of these various expertise should be brought together to make the decision. So the decision-making process, the decision-making unit, indeed, within the business is a much more elaborate setup than for individuals. So the difference between consumer and organizational buyers. Well, for the consumer, generally speaking, the purchase decisions are made by individuals or based on household consumption. So small scale. For organizations, the purchases are made for meeting customer needs and manufacturing of products. So purchases are made for a different purpose in business. Purchases are made in order to facilitate production. So it's a different situation completely from the individuals. For the consumer, decisions are made by individuals or couples. And in organizations, they may be made by several people, perhaps a small committee, as I said earlier. For the consumer, purchase decisions are made by brand reputation or recommendation, but little product knowledge. Generally speaking, recommendation and brand but for the organizational buyer, purchase decisions are based on specialist knowledge and technical requirements. So different criteria are being applied. The organizational buyer is radically different to the consumer. Decisions based on personal emotion or promotion tactics. So for the consumer, they may be based on personal emotions. Do they like the product? Do they like its design, its colors, its texture, its functionality? It may be a more personal decision, and that may be influenced by promotional tactics, by advertising, by repetitive advertising, by image. Decisions made by organizations are made rationally to meet criteria. They're not based on emotions. They're thought out and researched, and they've reflected upon it, and a wide diversity of opinion within the organization has been sought, and the decision has been carefully worked out. For the consumer, faster decision making as only one person's involved. So it's a much faster decision. One person goes into a shop, makes the decision, buy or not buy. They may hover around the product for a while depending on its price, or they may have some issues or some concerns, but essentially it's one person making a decision, so it'll be made relatively fast. In organizations, it takes longer time to make decisions. More people are involved, more people have contributions to make, and more analysis will be done. So it takes a longer time for organizations to make decisions. So the business decision-making unit in the organization is more complex, and that will take more time. And for the customer, the product purchase is for individual use. The individual buys the product for his or her use. Whereas in organizations, products are complex and based on customer usage. The product they buy will go to make a product that will be sold to the customer. So it's a much more complex decision. If they decide to buy a machine, the machine has to make a product, and that product has to be appealing to the final customer. So the decision within organizations to buy is much more sophisticated. The decision-making unit, well, there are 6 participators. I'm going to give a quick list of these, and then I'm going to do it all again in a little more reflection, a little more thought. But I'll just go quickly through the 6 participators in the decision-making unit. First of all, we have the initiators, the ones who start the purchase process. The initiators, the ones who start the purchase process, the ones who kick it off. Then there are the users, the ones who use the product. The deciders, they have the ability and authority to make decisions regarding suppliers, product modification, and so on. These are the ones who decide what products exactly, what are the specifications. And as I said, I'll talk about these in a little more detail after I've gone through this list of 6 participators. Number 4, influencers. These are guiders and provide necessary information about the decision, the ones who influence the decision, for or against. And then we've got the buyers, the ones who purchase the product and are bound by contractual arrangements. These are the ones who actually make the purchase. And we've also got gatekeeper. This is the flow and transfer of information. For example, secretaries will facilitate the flow of information within organizations. If they're thinking of making a decision, the decision-making unit may be a small team, and the secretaries and the administrators will have information and will pass the information to the various people. These are the gatekeepers, the ones who enable the decision to take place. Now let's go through these in a little more detail, and that will complete our video. So we have 6 participators, and we'll start with the initiators. These are the individuals that that acknowledge a purchase process. These are the ones who start the whole process running. They're the most important people because they're the ones who started. Without these, there will be no decision to purchase or not to purchase. Without initiators, nothing will happen. The whole process must be initiated, almost by definition. So these are the ones who acknowledge a purchase process. These are the ones who started off. They identify a need for a purchase which will solve a problem or satisfy a need. They identify the need for the purchase. They identify some situation and think about how to solve an issue within a situation, and the way to solve it may be to make a purchase. So they initiate the purchase process. Then we've got the users. After the initiators, we've got the users. These are the individuals or the department that use the product, quite simply. The opinions and views of users are important, as they will be using the product or the service. For example, children, when buying toys, are software for programmers. When programmers on computers want software, their opinions are very important. They're the ones who are going to use it. When children want toys, it's important that the toys that the children want are purchased, not just toys are purchased, because the children may not want those toys. They're wasted. So for the computer programmer, the appropriate software must be bought. Not just any software, the appropriate one. So their opinions are very important. The user's opinions and ideas must be used. Users are involved in the post-purchase evaluation stage of the purchase decision-making process. Once the purchase has been made, it should be evaluated. Was it a good idea? Was it a good purchase? Was it value for money? And the only people who can really contribute to that are the users. These are the people who use the product and will know most about it. Then we have the deciders. They have the ability and authority to make decisions regarding suppliers, product modifications, etc. These are the ones who decide on the product. They decide also on the attributes of the product, the design, the quality. They make the decisions about the product. So they make the final order or decision to purchase the product. They're the ones who at the last stage, they're the ones who say, yes, we should buy this, or no, we shouldn't. They are the deciders, and they do it based on criteria, the suitability of the product for the users and for the purpose for which it is being purchased. They decide. The influencers, well, these are guiders and provide necessary information about the decision criteria. These are the ones who influence the decision. They say it's a good idea. It's not such a good idea. It possibly is a good idea. These are the influencers, the ones who are thinking about the use of the product and who will have some input into the decision, but almost incidental inputs, almost off the cuff inputs. They make contributions that will influence the decision makers. There can be specialists or individuals who have knowledge or experience with certain products or services. And these are the best influencers, the ones who are specialists, the ones who have detailed knowledge, because their opinions will be more acceptable. Their ideas will be more acceptable, and they will be speaking from a position of strength because they have worked with the product, or they have knowledge of the product, they have an expertise, and they will influence the decision. There could be a lawyer or a solicitor, as they say in the UK, for legal advice, or family and friends who are familiar with products and services. So an influencer could be a lawyer, somebody who perhaps doesn't know the product that well, but understands the contractual implications of buying the product or getting involved with the product. Or it could be just family and friends. Depending on the nature of the product, family and friends could be used as influencers. They could talk about the product and ask whether it's absolutely a necessary purchase, or if it's purchased, will it do what was anticipated, and they will bring a critical viewpoint and influence the decision positively or negatively. But they're bringing a different perspective, and they're valuable in that sense. The buyers, well, individuals who purchase the product and are bound by contractual arrangements. These are the individuals who buy the product. We've had all of the others feeding in opinions and ideas about the product, but it's the buyers who actually make the purchase. They make the final decision to purchase the product and service, although they may not be the consumer. For example, children's toys. The mother will be the buyer, but the child will be the user. So the buyer is different from the user. And then finally the gatekeeper. The flow and transfer of information, for example, through secretaries and administrators. And these are very important people because they hold the information, the accumulated information from the various discussions and the various inputs, and they feed this through. But they can also collect other information from other sources and feed it through. So They are facilitating the purchasing decision. The individual in the decision-making unit who controls the flow of information about products and services, those are the gatekeepers, the ones who control the flow of information about products and services. For example, in the household, the individual who relays advertising and the promotional message, that's the gatekeeper. It's the one who passes the information to the others, the one who picks up on the information and then passes it along. That's the gatekeeper. Now let's look at the family decision-making unit. We've talked mostly about businesses up to now, but there is a family decision-making unit. Families and households have an influence on decision-making. Each individual occupies a role within a family unit. So within families, the families may make decisions. It could be big decisions about where to live, what sort of house, or where to live, or what furniture, what design, or it can be big decisions, or it could be very small decisions about how they live and how they organize themselves. But there still is a decision-making unit, and that's the family. Marketers aim to target each individual within the household. All individuals influence the decision-making unit, and marketing campaigns must be aimed at influencing all the members involved. So with a business, the decision-making unit may be a committee, and it finally falls to the buyer to make that decision. Now, companies who are selling to businesses will try to determine who's the decision-making unit, who's on this committee, or who will make the decision, and will target those. Within the family, marketers may target everyone within the family, because families are small units, and each member of the family will make some sort of influence or contribution to the decision to buy or not to buy. So there'll be a range of opinions within the family, and depending on the age of the different members of the family and their experiences and so on, they will have different opinions about whether to buy or not to buy. So marketing will target the various members of the family. For example, products and services must appeal to the initiator. That's the person who starts the idea rolling. That's the person who comes up with the idea to buy something. The influencer is important because they're going to influence the way the decision goes, for or against. And the decider. These are important people who make the decision in order to buy or make a purchase. To complete the video, let's just have a quick example, a very straightforward example. Just want to illustrate some of the concepts. We're dealing here with the family decision-making unit, and we're going to deal with a child's toy. Now, the initiator here is the child. The child wants a toy. Wants a toy to play with. So the initiator is the child. The influencer, the parents, the relatives and the friends, they can influence the child to want the particular toy or not to want it, or the style of toy that the child wants, or the design or the type of toy that the child wants. The decider will be the parents. They decide whether to buy it or not. So they are the deciders. And the buyer may be, let's say, the mother, who decides to buy the toy and give it to the child. So that's the buyer. And the user, well, the user will be the child. So we've got initiator, influencer, decider, buyer, and user. And we're just talking here about a child's toy. So with small purchases, we don't normally break them up into all of these areas, but they're all there. if we look carefully, we'll see all of these in even a very small purchase like a child's toy. Let's look at a family car. Well, the initiator here may be the main earner, the person who brings in the money into the house, the income into the house, which will be used to sustain the house, the household. The influencer on the family car may be the spouse of the person who's going to use the car. It could be the family, the wider family make a decision, or it could be friends. It could be the salesperson. These are influencers. So all of them will make contributions. They'll all say things about the car, whether it's a good idea or not a good idea, or that particular car is good or not so good, or fashionable or not fashionable, or economic or not economic. They'll all have opinions and make contributions. So now we have the initiator, the one who comes up with the idea to get a car. And then we have the influencers. And then we have the decider, which could be the mother or the father, the senior person in the family, who decide to get the car or not the car. And the buyer could be the main earner, who could be the mother, or could be the father, or it could be one of the children who's working and who's the main earner. And who will use the car? Well, that has to be decided by the family unit. It could be just the mother and the father are allowed to use the car. It's a family car, perhaps, and only the mother and the father are allowed to drive it. So again, here we're looking at a decision that the family have to make about a family car. We have the initiator, the influencer, the decider, the buyer, the user. The same with the child's toy. So even though it's a very small purchase, we still have these components, these parts of the decision-making unit feeding in and influencing the decision. So it applies also, of course, in the context of business and in the context of families and individuals who make decisions. Well, that's all we're going to deal with in this class on the decision-making unit. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.